In exactly 3 weeks, Lebanon will commemorate the 3rd anniversary of the devastating Beirut port blast that killed hundreds, injured thousands, made nearly 500,000 people homeless, and destroyed parts of one of the oldest cities in the world. A press conference organised by the Lebanese Forces Party last week drew attention to the upcoming anniversary and called on the European Union, which is currently in session, to take decisive action using the weight of their alliance to demand the UN appoint an international independent fact-finding mission be established to investigate the explosion and bring some semblance of justice to the victims. Last night, the EU issued a joint motion for a resolution on Lebanon, calling on the Human Rights Council to enact a resolution establishing and dispatching an impartial fact-finding mission into the blast to determine state and individual culpability and promote justice and restitution for the victims. Although the resolution has not yet been passed, this should be seen as a huge step towards justice for Lebanon and for the victims. The meeting was also attended by several lawmakers as well as members of the victims' families and Human Rights Watch's Lama Fahi, who revealed that her 3-year investigation clearly linked senior Lebanese political and security officials to the blast.
The August 4 explosion was one of the largest non-nuclear explosions in modern history. It killed at least 220 people, injured over 7,000 others, and displaced hundreds of thousands. An in-depth investigation by Human Rights Watch found that the disaster arose from the government's failure to protect the fundamental right to life. And it pointed to the involvement of senior political and security officials. Our report, which was based on over 100 official documents, interviews with senior Lebanese government, security, and judicial officials, among others, and correspondence we received from officials implicated in the blast, found there was clear evidence that senior Lebanese officials had culpability for the explosion. Despite this, nearly 3 years later, no one has been held accountable.
Lawyer Cecile Roukous, the sister of one of the victims killed in the blast, Joseph Roukous, affirmed the Human Rights Watch findings and spoke passionately for the need for international intervention after efforts to restart the local investigation headed by Judge Tariq Bitar was stymied by political interference in December 2021.
كل الوزراء اللي كان عندهم ايد بهيدا الملف هن خالفوا القانون وضربوا بعرض الحائط مبدأ فصل السلطات حتى الوزير مولوي. مشان هيك نحن عم نطلب من الأمم المتحدة إنه تطلع فينا، نحن عايشين تحت رحمة ناس فاسدين.
On January 23, 2023, Judge Bitar attempted to resume the investigation but was prevented by Lebanon's public prosecutor, Ghassan Awaidet, who filed a series of lawsuits against Bitar, suspending the investigation and ordering the release of all 17 suspects detained in connection to the case, one of whom immediately fled to the United States. Mr. Richard Kayoumjian, Lebanon's Minister of Social Affairs and member of the Lebanese Forces Party, said his party would this week send a petition to the EU and the Human Rights Council, signed by 40 members of the Lebanese Parliament, calling on them to fulfill their humanitarian responsibilities by pushing for an independent fact-finding mission into the blast.
لن تموت العدالة ولن تموت الحقيقة في لبنان ولن يفلت الجاني من العقاب. أكيد هالقضية ما راح تموت لأنه نحن وياكم ملتزمين هذه القضية.
عم نكون بتواصل مستمر مع البرلمان الأوروبي اللي منتأمل إنه الأسبوع القادم رح يصدر قرار أو توصية يؤشر فيها إلى حالة obstruction of justice in Lebanon يطلب أيضا أو يوصي أيضا بتشكيل لجنة تقصي حقائق تأتي إلى لبنان وتمارس الدور الذي يجب أن تمارسه هكذا لجان.
Following the press conference, Ms. Fahi told me that the EU has the tools to act as a bloc and pressure the Lebanese government to implement much-needed reforms and restart the stalled Judge Bitar investigation.
Just tell us where the EU is at on this and why today is important.
The EU Parliament has taken some important steps to articulate concerns about the lack of reform in Lebanon and the lack of movement for the investigation related to the Beirut blast. And this started as early as September 2021. And what we are calling for today is that they build on the work that they have already done to underline the need for action. There is a sanctions framework within the EU that could be used to go after those individuals that are responsible for the blast and also responsible for stymieing some badly needed reforms. And EU member states should play a leading role in the Human Rights Council and ensuring that a resolution is tabled that would advance justice for the victims of the blast.
Has there been any sign from any member of the EU Parliament could give the victims of August 4 hope?
So in the March session of the Human Rights Council, we saw that 38 states did come together, many of them currently sitting members of the Human Rights Council, to raise their concern around the political interference with the domestic investigation. And that is an important building block. You know, I think it is a clear message to the Lebanese authorities about the seriousness with which the international community is taking this.
At the United Nations Human Rights Council session in March this year, Ambassador Amanda Gawley of the Australian Mission in Geneva delivered a statement signed by 38 members of the Human Rights Council outlining the need for urgent reforms in Lebanon and for the immediate resumption of Judge Bitar's investigation.
And as we look ahead towards the September session of the Human Rights Council, we would hope that member states would act upon the joint statement from the March session in recognition of the fact that there has been no movement domestically to try to advance justice.
Ms. Rukuz was more confident of decisive action by the EU and that the joint EU motion issued last night might be formally passed in the coming week.
We met a lot of EU parliamentary here 2 weeks ago, and we informed them about all the obstruction we are facing here in Lebanon. So they are working with us. They representing a lot of parties in the European Parliament. So there is, I think, they will issue a resolution. I think in 1 week.
Mr. Ghassan Hasbani, the former Deputy Prime Minister and member of the LF Party, also spoke at the press conference outlining the significance of this case on a global level.
في هذه المناسبة إننا نذكر اللبنانيين والعالم بأن بيروت دمرت وأهلها قتلوا بأفظع عملية تدمير شامل في هذا القرن، فلا يمكن بأي منطق أن تمر جريمة بهذا الحجم من دون كشف الحقيقة أولاً والمحاسبة والعقاب، خاصة أن هذه الجريمة لا تطال اللبنانيين فحسب بل الإنسانية ككل.
In 21 days on August 4, 2023, the families of the victims, their friends and supporters will gather again at the port, in the shadows of the wheat silos, which stand as a symbol of defiance against those that tried to destroy them in an attempt to erase the only remaining sign of the tragedy that occurred there nearly 3 years ago. The memory of their loved ones, it seems, will not allow them to relinquish their demand for justice.
We appeal to you again and again and again. Please help us so that justice is served